My road to discovering my origins began in earnest in 2012 when my wife and I joined Ancestry.com. Describing itself as the world leader in family history and consumer genomics, Ancestry offers an extensive collection of 20 billion plus records and over 15 million users in its DNA network. Without taking this initial step of having my DNA analyzed and receiving those initial hits introducing me to my closest genetic relatives, I think it's safe to say my adoptive research would have gone nowhere. Of course, I'd still have what little identifying information my parents were able to give me, which proved to be invaluable, but I never would have known my genetic makeup nor been able to discover the names of my birth parents. I would still be neck-deep in my state of genealogical bewilderment. Discovering their names and where they came from made things real. They were local. In fact, they grew up just across the river from where I'd grown up. I'd driven through those areas countless times before in years past, but had no reason to believe that any of it held anything special for me. But now, I've begun to see things differently. I now see things through the eyes of the child who's traveled silently within me and who's had no voice or expression until now. A child who's discovering a new sense of place. A place where the flesh and blood of those who preceded him, formed him, lived, loved, laughed, and then faded from view. As I've researched adoption over previous modules, it's concerned me that the future manifestations of my work, whether in book or exhibit form, may not be easily understood as a body of work that's based largely on visions and abstractions of my own personal thoughts and emotions. While I think it's true that the readers and viewers of anyone's work shouldn't be hand-fed, I also believe there exists a fine line between that and not grasping at least some of the intended meaning. Honestly, I've increasingly found myself in a sort of visual and emotional echo chamber. This isn't hard to do for an adoptee. Our origin stories emanate naturally from deep subconscious wellsprings of self-constructed myths and fantasies that loop endlessly unless new oxygen is infused to change things. A form of research known as autoethnography may be that infusion for me. In my practice, at least, I think it may be the way to help me understand myself and my work in the larger context of the adoptive landscape and also make it accessible to a much wider audience. Autoethnography is self-focused. The researcher is the center of the investigation. Autoethnographic data provide the researcher with a window through which the outside world is understood. Visual autoethnography adds the use of visual materials to this autoethnographic narrative. Photography, painting, drawing, video, any of these forms can further inform the narrative. In the current Sustainable Practices module, I'm beginning to explore that window to the outside. I've taken a more collaborative approach than in past modules by arranging interviews with others who, like myself, are all part of the adoption triad and are intimately familiar with the adoption process. This has been a challenge due to time constraints and being laid out by COVID for several weeks, but has been satisfying and has yielded good narratives and images. Through photography and these related personal stories, I'm exploring the idea of learning more about my own adoptive experience by connecting with others in the same context, and this is new territory for me. The work of Rinko Kawachi and Marjolaine Riley has strongly influenced my recent work. Kawachi's very relatable. Her work is predominantly serene and understated. She sees the world around her, especially the small and the unnoticed, the everyday, with a unique, introspective gaze. But her work also expresses a darker side, juxtaposing the innocent with an undertone of the sinister. I think this is apropos, since it accurately reflects the innate feelings of unease and anxiety that many adoptees experience in their lives. Marjolaine Riley expresses the raw, ragged emotion of loss and trauma, as well as eliciting strong emotion through the representation of memories, places, and objects. Her book, Growing Up in the New Age, shows the passage of time and youth, and the people and places that combine to make her the person she is today. As she puts it, these are the stories of my kind of childhood, but looking to put that in a wider kind of cultural perspective. That's the essence of the autoethnographic approach I'd like to explore. Sustainability is important to me, and I'm cautiously optimistic as I progress with the project. I've used my digital camera and lenses for years now and have the ability to do proofing and final prints in-house. My backups are done via a Synology 5-disk NAS that is itself backed up to a Synology cloud resource. I'm even more acutely aware of the impact that the manufacture and use of these technologies has on nature and other humans, and I'm trying to be as considerate as possible in their application. I see this work being published in a book similar to one created by Celine Marchbank entitled A Stranger in My Mother's Kitchen. I love the inserted prints, recipes, and handwritten notes that give life to the memory of her mother and their time together. It's a beautiful tribute to life and memory. I'm also considering a print exhibit, but quite honestly, that hasn't gelled enough in my mind to know where it would be or how it would look. I also think the sustainability of this project is very exciting. There are so many nuanced projects and sub-projects coming from this that I can see this becoming a life's work in itself. The sky truly is the limit.